Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a vodcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a person who, based on his profile, I would say an activist, someone who's passionate about the climate, and he's using technology to communicate his thoughts, Mr. Kalyan Gautham from the US. Kalyan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashutosh, for having me.
Thank you. Kalyan is the founder and CEO of WATT, W-A-T-T, and you can see that on his jacket. It's the world's first platform for virtual marches, political rallies, and charity walks. He's a global shaper at the World Economic Forum. He's a former consultant. He's a climate reality leader. And very, very interestingly, he's been trained by Vice President Al Gore. And he's also a stargazer, a photographer, and a chess player. So Kalyan, let's first talk about WATT, which you say is the world's first platform for virtual marches, political rallies, and charity walks. You are a virtual activist. Tell me about what you do at WATT.
It's very interesting that you say I'm a virtual activist. In general, activists are always, whether virtual or in the real world, they're all activists. Correct. But in this seemingly indifferentiable world, virtual or physical world, it now is becoming all the same. But I think I do not define myself as an activist or a virtual activist. Okay. Rather, I'm a technologist who's helping out all the activists, social workers who want to do social and environmental good to scale their impact to the world. That's pretty much what I do through my organization.
Very interesting.
To explain a bit in detail, as you were saying, we are the world's first platform for community engagement in events like virtual charity walks and running events. Let's say there is a march or a charity walk happening in Boston for a cause that you and I believe in. The only way we can participate in it is fly all the way to Boston, right? Because it's a very localized event. And even for the organizers to organize it at multiple locations and locations takes a lot of capital and human resources. Firstly, it's very unfortunate that people would have to organize these events to do social good. On top of it, it should never be cumbersome. So this was something that has been bothering me for long. So what we have been doing through WATT is we digitize them in a way that organizers can simply initiate their events with just the tap of a button on our platforms. People from their network can join the events by downloading our application and selecting the events that they want to participate in and literally start walking for them from anywhere they are on the planet. Wow. We count every footstep that they take, create stories of them walking across the world. In the process, help the organizers get larger global outreach and also help them raise funds for these causes.
Fascinating. So tell me, Kalyan, does WATT stand for something or is it a unit of energy?
It's a unit of human energy. Okay. It's an acronym for walk the talk. So walk the talk. Walk the talk.
Okay, wonderful. I've been trying to figure out what does WATT stand for. But tell me, I've not spoken to anybody who is so passionate about using technology to support activism. What was your motivation to start this?
Firstly, thanks for the kind words. I believe the motivation comes from a lot of sources, not one single source, but if I have to identify something, I've always been very active in social and environmental initiatives right from childhood. That's how I was brought up. I believe I got this from my mom and my late grandmom. By being so active and then transitioning myself into a consulting role, I had to balance these two somehow in my life because both of them are equally important for me at one point in time.
Correct.
And as a consultant, all that I believe I was supposed to do is travel around the world, present the presentations I think no one really wanted to see, but get to that last slide saying, how much does it cost? Just tell me, kind of. Don't get me wrong, I love my consulting
No,
job.
I'm fully understand you completely. Yeah.
I really love my consulting job, but somewhere down the line, since I was traveling across the world, I lived in 6 different countries during that time. I wasn't able to contribute back to my home country for the causes that I truly believe in. And not just home country. When I go to a different country, I create a bond with that country. I contribute to social work, and then I move to a different one. That was bothering me a lot. And specifically, I believe I still remember this was quite a lot of bothering for me during the anti-corruption movement, which was happening in India, but I could contribute nothing but hit a like or donate on social media platforms. I'm not saying this is not a good thing to do. It is, but for me, it was not enough. It was not quenching my thirst as much as I would have felt if I were physically present in place.
Right.
So then I spoke to my friend who has also become a co-founder later on. To build a tool just for the two of us. Hey, let's just build this tool. We start walking and then tell the world that we are there for you, although we are remotely located. He was also not in the same locations. He was also traveling. We built it with only the intention that only two of us use. But then later my friends started asking like, hey, why don't you give us also the tool? Like, okay, take it. It was a small thing that we built. But soon we realized that there's a large demand for this. And then I wanted to see what's really the market in that. And I went into it. And then finally, I quit my job later on and started pursuing this full time.
How fascinating to be able to actually pursue your passion the way you're doing. So, Kalyan, tell me, or for our viewers and listeners, share with me 1 or 2 examples of where you have actually supported some individuals in the recent past.
Sure. So there are many kind of organizations we help. We help non-profit organizations. We help corporates. We help political organizations. The different kinds of impact that we create for all of it. So one of the recent ones that we have helped is Income Movement Foundation to create a movement for universal basic income, primarily in the US, but it's a global event. They wanted to create a Guinness World Record by recording 50 million footsteps, which is analogous to walking across the equator once.
Correct.
So what the ideology for them was, they wanted to create a universal movement, and they wanted to create awareness through this movement so that people understand what universal basic income is. Right now for them, awareness itself is a big hurdle. Forget about achieving or moving things towards policy. Right? Now, they started working with us in 2020 during the pandemic. They used to organize marches earlier too, but then during the pandemic, of course, no one could go onto the streets. So going digital was the way. They started working with us, and they have created a lot of impact by getting a lot of media coverage later on, and then moving policies in the US here, driving the stimulus checks multiple times through the movement. Of course, there's no one single point that could have helped them, but what differently helped giving them a larger global outreach for them. So in short, there are 3 different layers that I see in which we help our customers. One, in mobilizing their own network, in the sense, one of the first events that we did was with Global Shapers community at World Economic Forum for the event called Voice for the Planet. As you know, we are present in almost the entire planet in all the countries. But mobilizing everyone on one platform wasn't a very easy thing because we are all physically located elsewhere. So what has brought everyone together on one platform with the just existing network right? And I believe, could record nearly 2 million footsteps within like a couple of weeks or so, if I'm not wrong.
Wow.
And from there on, it started catching up like a fire for people in their own network. So the second layer of it, in which we create impact, is widening the existing network that each of our partners would have. And of course, later comes in the third layer, many other byproducts of it, like fundraising, policy making, and kind of impacts, which are the end goals, but we serve as the means to these end goals at this moment.
Wow. So, Kalyan, I don't know much about activism as it happens digitally, but I'm just going back to the mid-70s when I was in college. And, marched in with Jayaprakash Narayan and Jagjeevan Ram, all political leaders. And my understanding of activism was that people only react when they see 100,000 or whatever number of people physically marching down. I'd love to get your perspective on how, using technology, you are able to influence change.
Sure. Ashutosh, I think that's a very, very important question that you raised. Traditionally, that has been the issue, that a social concern would gain importance if only a majority of people vouch for it, right? Correct. And it feels so wrong, and also right at the same time, that everyone should feel for it. But for the change should happen, we shouldn't be waiting for everyone to feel for it. So now, in such situations, at large, the minority groups are at a disadvantage. It could be anything by minority group. It could be LGBTQ communities. It could be, in Indian perspective, it could be the lower income financial or backward caste, or whatever I mean, right? It could be anything, or even less educated people, rural location people. Absolutely. Because they don't have the reach to the top of the government officials. Now, I believe what our platform does is phenomenal work in raising the voices of each individual without having to struggle to get those tens and thousands of people vouching for them.
Okay.
In the sense, traditionally, how much a cause is important is dependent on this metric, is seen as from the metric incorrectly by saying how many people believe in it.
Right.
But how many is entirely different from how much.
Okay.
So I could be the only person on the planet facing an issue, but it's still an issue for me and for my life. How do I tell the world if no one cares for it? And one classic example is ALS. A few years ago, there are only a small percentage of people who suffer from ALS, but it's still a problem for them. But if people weren't able to give enough money for the research, they weren't able to survive. And so they had to come with something very innovative called Ice Bucket Challenge, get to the who's who of the Silicon Valley, right. Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, everyone had to participate in it. Yeah. And then millions and millions of people across the world participated for at least a few thousands to donate.
Correct.
This cannot happen for every cause. So on our platform, we have this unique metric called trots. So it's nothing but footsteps. One individual could simply take 1 million, 10 million footsteps over a course of time and get the visibility across the world by only that person walking, rather than calling 10,000 people out there and then making them do 10 million footsteps. So that's the ability that we give. And you're right in saying in the 70s, 80s, movements were happening like that. And to a large extent, they are happening even now the same way. That's where the gap is, right? We are now in 21st century. We shouldn't be doing the same way things were being done in the 20th century or 19th century. So we should evolve with technology, and that's where we come into picture.
Fascinating. So one last question before I move to the next segment. How do you, through what and your campaigns, influence decision makers? Is it through media?
That's a great question. So it's not just media, it's through policymakers and many others too. Again, it goes back to the same thing that I was trying to say earlier. Right now, we are in a world where the internet is nowhere different from the physical world. And in fact, whether things happen on in the physical world or not, if something really is catching up in the internet world, the policymakers are generally shaken by it. They just want to shut it down before it catches up into the physical world. So their eyes are always onto the social media platforms.
Right.
So what the young and even the elderly do through our platform is not just get the media attention. Definitely, that's one of the biggest areas where it catches momentum. The second thing is also catch the eyeballs of the policymakers locally and globally, so that they pay attention to which 10 years ago probably a policymaker would have neglected something happening on the internet space, but now no one does that.
Okay, fascinating. So Kalyan, I'm now going to talk to you for the next few minutes about the climate, and and you've done a lot of work on this area as well. You have been trained by Vice President Al Gore, and from whatever little I remember, he was one of the earliest leaders, global leaders, to have spoken about climate change. Tell me about the kind of training you received, and what were some of your thoughts?
Sure. My training with Vice President was one of the most memorable trainings I've ever had. I'm generally a person who doesn't believe in getting in one place and getting trained. I'm a self-learner most often, but this was a life-changing moment for me in multiple ways. So as you know, I'm a global shaper at World Economic Forum, and we had the opportunity to apply for this training, and a few of us were selected to completely travel to Minneapolis a few years ago. And we were trained by Vice President Al Gore and many other influential people in one arena for a couple of days.
Okay.
One thing that I took away from it is the voice of the youth matters.
Absolutely.
I was a person in 20s sitting there talking to the vice president himself, the mayors, the senators across the states in the US, and big influential people in various industries, including corporations, media, and all that. I was like, why would anyone want to listen to me? But to give you an example, Amanda Gorman is also trained by Vice President Al Gore, and her poetry is very well known to be heard as a climate reality leader too, and of course at the inauguration of the president in 2021. So the voices of the young and the youth to be heard gives us a feeling of empowerment and feeling of belongingness in the world. So then we start making the change from there on. Otherwise, if we don't feel that, we feel like, we still have to live for 10 to 20 years to make a change. And that's not the attitude that we would want to upbring the youth with. They should be able to make change even at the earliest ages that they can, as much as Greta Thunberg is making that in her teenage life. And there were too many inspiring people and too many inspiring lives. One of whom I would profoundly name is Jamie Nack. She's also from Los Angeles.
Okay.
She has shown us some videos of her expedition to the Greenland, and we literally saw her witnessing ice melting down in front of her. That's the change that we couldn't witness otherwise sitting in silos. And there were a few other influential people whom I grew up reading, but never thought of I would meet them. And something very profound that they have taught me during the training has changed my life to a lot of extent. One of such people is Thomas Friedman during the training.
I've read a lot of Thomas Friedman,
Yeah.
Very interesting. So, Kalyan, it is often said that climate change is a victim of politics and politicians. I'd love to get your perspective.
I couldn't agree more. Definitely, it is that. If anything, that the pandemic has taught us, it has only strengthened this feeling that climate change has been a victim of politics and politicians, rightly put by you. The world could come together to fight a pandemic as quickly as we have never seen before, right? And if that's the case, I think we should be able to do it for any other problem too. The problem here is there is no political will, or there is little political will to push things as fast as we want the climate change to be addressed at this point in time. That's the single most big problem I would say that we need to face. And as civilians across the world, I believe we should come together, create a movement, and make it policy changes.
I agree with you on your create a movement, and please count me in, especially if you're doing it through what.
Thank you.
So, Kalyan, I've got time for two more questions. And, you just spoke of the pandemic and how the world came together. But I also had another observation, and I'd love your perspective, that the pandemic, because it kept all human beings inside their homes, gave Mother Earth a chance, or Mother Nature a chance to heal herself. What are your thoughts? Our planet can heal itself if we give it a chance.
That's a very interesting thing. Actually, it's an indication, a true indication that there is still a chance for the healing, right? That's the important lesson that we have learned. To living in this polluted world for so long, many of us may have forgotten, especially your generation, may have forgotten how clean, how serene things were maybe back in 70s or 60s.
I've got to add that I've always say that it is millennials like you who will change this world, because my generation inherited something fantastic and we messed it up.
That's a good way to put it. I didn't want to be so blunt, but yeah, a lot of things went wrong during the industrialization. I couldn't agree more on that. When we were born, the millennials, and more importantly, the Gen Z, they have not seen the clean world at all.
Yes.
For us, maybe we are forgetting as millennials, but Gen Z, they haven't even seen it. And now I think we are responsible for the Gen Z, and I would also want to hold the baby boomers responsible for us to give us a better future. And I'm not here to say that you have to do everything, but I would do everything for you to do everything what you can do. And that's where I am doing climate change, addressing climate change at this point in time. So the reason that I would say we need, the biggest lesson that we have learned during the pandemic is that there is still way to heal, is that the politicians haven't yet learned that. The brief period of few months that we have seen of silence on streets, as you said, put the world to a healing, which means that should be a sign for us to reevaluate and remember what was there in the 70s and 60s as clean world, and then get back there. But we're still not there. I think that's the remembrance we should take.
I agree. So Kalyan, with that, we've run out of time. I could just carry on chatting with you because it's such an amazing conversation. But thank you so much for the time you've spent with me. Thank you for talking to me about how you are really supporting activism through what. And as I mentioned, count me in for any support that you would like from me. And I will certainly follow you. But thank you also for talking even though briefly, about the climate change, and some of the challenges we are facing. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me, Ashish.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.